This footage shows the moment New Zealander Edmund Hillary and Nepali Tenzing Norgay returned from their expedition. The climbers are greeted as true heroes. These two men had indeed accomplished something incredible. They became the first people to reach the summit of Everest. Their ascent became an example of how a rope team of two climbers became one. They always helped each other in the most difficult situations. This is precisely what allowed them to reach the summit and return. The climbers summited Everest on May 29, 1953. However, the entire world only learned of their tremendous success on June 2nd. The expedition's leadership deliberately withheld the news of the triumphant ascent to publish it on the day of Queen Elizabeth II's coronation. For this gift, the Queen of Great Britain knighted Edmund Hillary, and Tenzing Norgay received the Order of the Star of Nepal, his country's highest honor. But recently, researchers have had a chance to prove that the New Zealander and his guide were not the first to reach the highest point on the planet. Due to its harsh climate and extremely low temperatures at the summit, Everest is called the third and most inaccessible pole of the Earth. After all, its summit was reached later than the North and South Poles were discovered. This is partly because mountaineering emerged relatively recently. Officially, mountaineering was born in 1786 when Swiss doctor Michel Gabriel Paccard ascended the summit of Mont Blanc, the highest point in the Alps, at 4,810 meters, thus ushering in the era of mountaineering. In the town of Chamonix in eastern France, a monument was erected in honor of the first ascenders, and the day of the ascent, August 8th, is now considered International Mountaineering Day worldwide. Everest, whose summit stands at 8,848 meters, is one of the most treacherous and difficult mountains to climb in the world. Every climber who decides to ascend it must clearly understand that they might not return home. One can die during the ascent for various reasons, from falling and breaking every bone to cardiac arrest from oxygen deprivation, or it could be a fatal accident, like a frozen valve on an oxygen tank. Moreover, if a climber twists their ankle and cannot move on their own, few will be willing to carry them, because in the death zone above 8,000 meters, everyone is at the limit of their abilities. But perhaps the main danger awaiting climbers on Everest is high altitude or mountain sickness. This is a pathological condition related to the lack of oxygen in the air and low atmospheric pressure. The symptoms of gornyashka, as climbers call this ailment, can appear at altitudes as low as 2,000 meters. Altitude sickness manifests differently in everyone and at different heights. For some, it's just mild dizziness. For others, it's a feeling of malaise, and for some, it can cause nosebleeds or even lead to a person coughing up foam. It's also important to consider that chronic conditions or minor illnesses that are harmless at sea level can be significantly exacerbated at high altitudes. For example, a common cold with a cough can develop into a pulmonary edema within a day. During an ascent of Everest, one can see the remains of those for whom the path to the summit was a one-way journey. Green boots has become a grim symbol of the world's highest mountain. This is what climbers call an unidentified body lying at an altitude of 8,500 meters on the southwest slope of Everest. The body of the unknown climber in green boots was first discovered in 2001 by French mountaineer Pierre Paperon. He suggested it was a Chinese climber who had summited Everest 6 months before him. Green boots is considered a gruesome marker of the 8,500-meter altitude. Gruesome because bodies are not brought down from this height. The climbers lie on the slopes of Everest as they fell. Sometimes they are buried by being pushed into a glacial crevice. However, most researchers believe that the owner of the ominous green boots was a climber who died on Everest during the infamous 1996 tragedy. Presumably, he was a member of an Indian expedition that was caught in a blizzard in May 1996. In these circumstances, 14 people died. 3 members of this expedition decided to turn back, while the others were left under the snowdrifts. Climbers began attempting to conquer the highest peak on Earth over 100 years ago. In the first half of the 20th century, there were nearly 50 expeditions to the Himalayas, but no attempt to climb Everest was successful. For a long time, it was believed that British climber Edward Felix Norton came closest to the goal. On June 4, 1924, 2 British climbers, Norton and Somervell, set out to storm the summit of Everest. Somervell felt ill due to suffocation and was forced to abandon the ascent, but Norton continued without oxygen to an altitude of 8,572 meters, setting a world record that stood for over 50 years. It was not until 1978 that Italian climber Reinhold Messner and German climber Peter Hebeler climbed Everest without supplemental oxygen. And in 1980, Reinhold Messner completed a solo ascent, reaching the summit of Everest alone. Britain's George Mallory and Andrew Irvine were also among the pioneers who attempted the highest 8,000er. According to unofficial accounts, in June 1924, they were just 150 meters short of the coveted summit. In any case, that was the altitude where they were last seen alive. One member of the British expedition, Noel Odell, claimed he was watching the climbers through binoculars shortly before they went missing. High up on the slope, he saw 2 moving black dots in a break in the clouds. Then this remarkable sight was obscured by a cloud. No one ever saw Mallory and Irvine again. And the question remains, were they ascending to the summit or descending after having conquered it? Since then, this question has haunted researchers. What happened to the British climbers, and did they reach the summit of Everest? It is a mystery shrouded in darkness. Subsequently, individual pieces of Irvine and Mallory's equipment have been found on the mountain slopes. However, this has only added to the confusion. During a search expedition in 1999, the body of one of the climbers, Mallory, was discovered. But Irvine's body was not found, neither then nor later. Mallory's body was missing a photograph of his wife and the flag he had planned to plant on the summit, which could be considered indirect evidence that they in fact did reach and conquer the peak. According to eyewitness accounts, Andrew Irvine had a camera with him, the one item that could prove the British climbers reached the summit of Everest, if indeed they did. The chances of finding the coveted camera with its undeveloped film rose sharply after an accidental discovery made in September 2024. During a search expedition, Irvine's ice axe was found on the ascent, leading climbers to believe that his body must be nearby. The body itself was not found, but a boot was discovered under the ice, containing part of Irvine's foot. The finding was sent for DNA analysis. Experts will compare samples from the remains with genetic material taken from Irvine's descendants. There is little doubt they will match. After all, the sock found inside the boot is embroidered with the British climber's initials and surname. Researchers believe this discovery significantly narrows the search area for Irvine's coveted camera, which in turn could rewrite the history of mountaineering.